He walked into the bank on a sunny afternoon, holding a simple folder and wearing a calm smile. It was supposed to be a quick visit, a wire transfer for his sister's college tuition. But the moment he stepped inside, something shifted. Eyes followed him. The branch manager froze, her hand trembling as she reached for the phone. Minutes later, the heavy glass doors swung open, and 2 FBI agents marched in, heading straight for him. Every head turned, phones were lifted. A hush fell over the room. What could they possibly want with him? And why, seconds later, would they salute?
Tavion Harris lived by a simple rule: work hard, protect your family, and treat everyone with respect. At 29, he built a career as a project manager in renewable energy, earning a reputation for reliability and quiet determination. But his proudest role wasn't at work. It was being a guardian to his younger sister, Alina. Ever since their parents died in a car accident, Tavion had been her protector, mentor, and biggest supporter. And now, with Alina accepted into a prestigious university, he was determined to pay her tuition in full so she could focus on her studies, not bills. That's why he walked into the bank that warm Thursday afternoon, wearing a tailored gray suit, polished black shoes, and carrying a slim folder with all the transfer documents. His plan was simple: get in, complete the wire transfer, and get back to the office. The bank's lobby was bright, with sunlight spilling through wide glass windows. The steady hum of keyboards and soft chatter filled the air. Tavion greeted the teller with a polite nod and began explaining his transaction. It all felt routine, until he noticed a shift. From across the room, the branch manager was watching him. Her expression wasn't friendly curiosity. It was cold, calculated, like she was searching for something wrong. She leaned toward another employee, whispering, before quietly walking away with her phone in hand. Tavion's brow furrowed. She spoke in a hushed but urgent tone, glancing back at him between words. He didn't know why, but something told him this was more than a simple call. And in just minutes, the entire bank would know his name.
The next morning, Marcus woke up with that same easy smile he always had, ready for another busy day at the library. His shift started early, and the place was quiet, just how he liked it. He greeted the regulars, helped a little girl find her favorite fairy tale, and even chatted with Mrs. Robinson, the elderly neighbor who often came in just for the company. But that peace didn't last long. It started with a voice, loud, sharp, cutting through the calm. "Hey you, what are you doing here?" Marcus turned, confused. A man in a pressed uniform stood at the doorway, an off-duty police officer he had never met. His eyes were narrow, his tone already accusatory. "I work here," Marcus said, holding up his staff badge. But the officer didn't even glance at it. Instead, he stepped closer, voice low but laced with suspicion. "I've had reports of someone loitering, and you match the description." Marcus felt a knot twist in his stomach. Loitering? In his own workplace? He tried to explain, pointing to the cart of books, to his name tag, but every word seemed to make the officer's face tighten more. The conversation grew louder, drawing the attention of library patrons. A few whispered, some stared, others quickly looked away. The officer's hand hovered near his belt. "Step outside," he ordered. Marcus's heart pounded. He could see the disbelief in Mrs. Robinson's eyes, the confusion on the little girl's face, but he also felt the weight of every pair of eyes in the room, silently judging. "I'm not going anywhere until my manager gets here," Marcus said firmly. The officer's expression hardened, his voice rising. "Are you refusing a lawful order?" The air in the library felt heavier, thicker. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat over the silence that had fallen. Then, before anyone could react, the officer reached out and grabbed Marcus's arm. The shock was electric. People gasped. A book fell from someone's hands, pages fluttering to the floor. "Stop resisting," the officer barked, even though Marcus was frozen, not moving an inch. In that moment, Marcus realized the truth. This wasn't about suspicion. This was about him, his skin, his presence, his very existence in a place where someone decided he didn't belong. And as the officer began pulling him toward the door, Marcus caught sight of something. A phone. A young man was recording. Their eyes met for half a second, and Marcus silently prayed, "Don't stop filming," because now the truth had to come out. Cliffhanger beat. Marcus's foot crossed the library's threshold, and in that instant, the sound of distant sirens began to echo down the street.
The pause was suffocating. Tavion could hear the faint buzz of the overhead lights, the shuffle of a foot somewhere in the back, and the steady thump of his own heartbeat. Every eye in the bank was locked on him. The lead FBI agent reached into his jacket again. Tavion braced for the cold bite of steel on his wrists. But instead, the agent pulled out a folded document. He unfolded it slowly, glanced at Tavion, and then did something no one expected. He straightened, heels clicking together, and raised his hand in a crisp salute. Gasps rippled through the room. The second agent mirrored the gesture. Tavion's eyes widened, his confusion momentarily outweighing his fear. The agent stepped closer, not to restrain him, but to shake his hand. "This man," the lead agent said, turning to the crowd, "is a decorated veteran who served with distinction overseas. He's here today as a civilian, but his service to this country is something we will always honor." The room was frozen, the branch manager's face drained of color. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came. Whispers spread quickly among the customers. A veteran? She called the FBI on him? Unbelievable. Tavion stood still, feeling a strange mix of vindication and anger rising in his chest. He had just been humiliated in front of strangers, treated like a criminal for the simple act of wiring money. Yet now, in the same breath, he was being publicly honored. The lead agent leaned in slightly, his voice low. "I'm sorry you had to experience this, sir. We'll be filing a report." Phones captured every second. The videos would spread within hours. But for Tavion, the sting of the accusation wasn't going to fade with a salute. It would live with him long after the cameras turned off. The agents lowered their hands, giving him one final nod of respect. But the damage had already been done.
The days after the incident were a blur for David. Social media lit up with videos from bystanders, sparking outrage. News channels replayed the scene again and again. Each time the world saw not just a man by the pool, but a human being whose peace was shattered because of his skin color. The officers involved faced internal review, but the official response felt hollow. Procedures will be evaluated. No direct apology, no real accountability. Yet, something bigger began to stir. Neighbors who had never spoken to David came by with food, words of support, and apologies for not stepping in sooner. Strangers online sent thousands of messages, some sharing their own stories of humiliation and fear. David himself felt torn. Part of him wanted to retreat, to hide from the glare of attention. But another part, the part that refused to be defined by someone else's prejudice, spoke louder. He began attending local council meetings, advocating for community oversight of law enforcement. His voice, once quiet and unnoticed, became a rallying point. In the weeks that followed, people began to see the pool incident for what it truly was. Not an isolated misunderstanding, but a reflection of something deeply embedded in the system.
It was a reminder that racism doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, disguised as rules and protocols, until it crushes someone's dignity. David stood at a small community gathering one evening, looking out at faces of every race and age. He said, "I don't want this to happen to the next person, or the one after that. This isn't just my fight, it's ours." The crowd erupted in applause, not for the pain he endured, but for the courage he showed in turning it into a force for change.